If you've ever felt like you're doing everything right, counting calories, sweating on the treadmill, and still hitting a frustrating wall with weight loss,
Hmm.
you are certainly not alone.
Hmm.
For decades, the dominant advice has been this cold arithmetic of calories in, calories out. But what if that model is, well, fundamentally incomplete?
You're right.
What if the body isn't a simple calculator, but a complex, sensitive ecosystem?
That's exactly where our deep dive today is taking us. We've looked at sources that just completely challenge this simplistic narrative.
Mhm.
They argue that the body doesn't just add and subtract.
Right.
It interprets, it anticipates, and, above all, it prioritizes self-protection.
Okay, so let's unpack this. Our mission for you today is to really redefine weight loss. We're trying to move it away from being a battle of willpower or, deprivation,
Yes.
and reframe it as a precise physiological strategy. And this strategy rests on three integrated pillars: hormonal stability, quality nutrition, specifically targeted fats, and hydration. And a very precise, low-impact form of movement, which in this case is machine-based Pilates.
And the core thesis that these sources establish is that if the body's internal orchestration is disturbed, if you're dealing with chronic high insulin, rampant cortisol from stress, poor sleep, your metabolism just starts operating under a state of high alert.
It's a permanent alarm.
Exactly, a permanent alarm. Think of it like a house with a fire alarm that is constantly shrieking.
And a body in that state.
A body in perpetual alarm only cares about one thing: survival. And survival means prioritizing storage over release. It just locks the system down, making fat loss nearly impossible, even if you are diligently restricting calories.
Wow.
The key is turning off the alarm first.
Okay, so if the alarm is on, which hormones are actually holding the key to that metabolic lock? Where do we even start the stabilization process?
The central regulator, without question, is insulin. It's the hormone that manages fuel distribution. It decides whether the body is in storage mode,
Lipogenesis.
lipogenesis, right, or release mode, lipolysis. When you eat, especially food that's quickly digested, insulin spikes, and it sends this vital command to your cells: open up, store this energy.
And that's normal. I mean, that's how we survive. But when does that natural vital process become a lock?
It happens when that stimulus becomes chronic. If you're constantly hitting your body with sugar spikes all day long, from refined carbs, sugary drinks, constant grazing, your pancreas is just working overtime. It's trying to push glucose into the cells, but the cells, they're constantly barraged by these signals, and they grow tired, they become less receptive.
They put on earplugs, essentially.
Precisely. That's
Yeah.
a perfect way to put it. This is insulin resistance. And because the cells are ignoring the signal, the body perceives the situation as inefficient.
It's not working.
It's not working, so the pancreas overcompensates by secreting even more insulin. This state is called chronic hyperinsulinemia.
Constantly high insulin.
Constantly high insulin levels circulating. And the consequence is devastating, because even if you're eating less overall, the perpetual presence of insulin keeps that store signal dominant. It locks you into fat accumulation mode.
That explains the storage, but it doesn't quite explain that, that gnawing feeling of hunger. Why do people feel like they're starving when their body is clearly holding huge reserves?
That brings us to the crucial satiety duo, leptin and ghrelin. Leptin is secreted by your fat tissue, and it should act as the messenger to your brain saying, hey, we have plenty of reserves, you are satiated.
So the signal is on.
The signal is on, but the receiver is broken. Chronic issues like poor sleep, high inflammation, or that constant sugar intake can lead to leptin resistance. The brain literally doesn't hear the reserve signal.
I was confused.
The sources describe the brain as being confused about its resource status. It leads to this persistent, often aggressive feeling of lack, like you haven't eaten in days.
So we've got storage locked in place by insulin and a hunger signal that's broken because the brain is confused. It's a double whammy.
It is. And then there's ghrelin, the direct hunger stimulant. The sources really emphasize that if you approach this through harsh, brutal caloric deprivation, what so many traditional diets recommend, ghrelin levels will just skyrocket. The body sees this as a famine, and a body-facing famine becomes physiologically obsessed with food. This obsessive state almost guarantees weight regain.
So the strategy has to be gentle.
Gentle stabilization, that's a goal. Keep ghrelin quiet, don't starve it until it screams.
And lurking beneath all this metabolic chaos is stress. We can't ignore cortisol. If the body is in this permanent alarm state, where does cortisol fit in?
Cortisol is the body's primary long-term stress manager, and it's a key driver of where we store fat. Chronic stress, whether it's emotional, lack of sleep, or even too much brutal depleting exercise.
Right.
It activates cortisol, which specifically favors depositing fat in the abdominal area. This visceral fat is metabolically risky and just notoriously stubborn.
The belly fat that seems to survive every diet attempt.
Exactly. The body is literally hedging its bets against a perceived long-term crisis, holding the most efficient fuel right where it can access it fastest. So controlling cortisol isn't just about feeling calmer.
No.
It's a direct metabolic requirement for reducing that stubborn fat storage.
So instability is the enemy. The solution starts with stabilization, and that means looking at our fuel. The sources are so emphatic about forgetting sugar. That's strong language. Why is refined sugar the primary target here?
Because refined sugar is physiologically the most volatile fuel source you can find. It forces the body onto that glycemic roller coaster. You get a rapid spike in energy and then inevitably a crash.
Which triggers that insulin response again.
And then the subsequent drop in blood sugar.
I think everyone listening can immediately relate to that 3 p.m. slump, that desperate, almost manic search for the coffee at the vending machine.
That feeling is not a lack of willpower. It is a neurobiological driver. That crash is the body urgently seeking the next peak to restore stability. For durable weight loss, you have to get off that cycle.
But if we're forgetting quick sugar, the instinct for so many people will be, I have to drastically cut fat to save calories. You know, the classic 90s advice. What do the sources say about quality fats?
This is where we break from that old caloric dogma. The strategy isn't about reducing the sheer volume of food, but replacing that volatile fuel with something dense, structured, and stabilizing.
So does that look like?
You have to replace the quick sugars with sufficient protein, fiber, and what the sources call quality lipids, healthy fats.
But doesn't adding fat automatically mean adding calories?
Yeah.
And therefore, sabotaging the effort?
It might mean a temporary adjustment in your caloric profile, but the metabolic difference, it's just crucial. Quality fats, think avocados, nuts, high-quality oils. They're structural components of the body. They're necessary for healthy cell membranes. They're precursors for hormone production. And most importantly, they provide extended, gentle satiety. They slow down the entire digestive process.
So they keep you fuller, longer.
Exactly. By using fats correctly, you prevent that cycle of feeling deprived, compensating with quick carbs, and spiking your insulin again. Fats help keep leptin and ghrelin happy and calm.
That makes sense. We've covered food, but we often overlook the most basic element, water. Many people treat hydration as secondary. Why is that considered such a critical error?
It's a classic error for two major reasons. The simple reason is that thirst often masquerades as hunger. We interpret that physiological cue as needing food, leading to unnecessary snacking when all the body needed was a drink.
So we're fueling a thirst problem with a carb solution.
Precisely. But the metabolic reason is even more critical. When you successfully initiate fat mobilization, when you actually break down those lipids, your body produces a significant amount of metabolic waste. Toxins, frankly.
And water is the transport system.
Water is the primary vehicle for removing that waste through the renal system.
So water isn't just a filler. It's the body's mandatory flushing mechanism for successful fat loss.
It is the primary vector for successful excretion. If you are poorly hydrated, you slow down that whole elimination process. And an organism that eliminates poorly tends to retaining water, retaining inflammation, making the whole process sluggish. And it's not just about slamming a huge amount of water at once. It's about maintaining physiological fluidity, steady, consistent intake to support continuous lipolysis. That consistent internal flow, it indirectly but powerfully supports the entire fat release mechanism.
We've set the hormonal and nutritional stage. Now we have to move the body. This brings us to the surprising pivot in the source material. Instead of high-intensity calorie-blasting cardio, the focus is intensely on machine-based Pilates, the Reformer, the Cadillac. Why such precision? Why not just run?
Because we're still operating within that framework of hormonal stability. Running, especially long, high-intensity bouts, can often significantly increase cortisol if the body isn't well adapted.
And we know what that does.
It counteracts abdominal fat loss. So we aren't seeking depletion here. We're seeking metabolic recomposition and hormonal refinement.
So we're training smarter, not harder.
Exactly. Muscle is a key metabolic organ. When you build deep, high-quality muscle fiber, the kind Pilates is famous for, you directly improve insulin sensitivity.
Which means less insulin is needed overall.
Right. The glucose is used efficiently by the muscle, keeping insulin levels lower. Pilates, done with precision and control, increases your resting energy expenditure and enhances the body's natural capacity to use lipids as fuel. It boosts fat oxidation even when you're not moving.
I get the muscle argument, but how do the machines specifically help reduce cortisol?
It's all about the progressive, precise resistance. The Reformer, for instance, uses springs. And springs provide this constant fluid resistance that forces deep muscle recruitment and control without the destructive joint impact you get from heavy lifting or brutal training.
So it's efficient.
It's a focus on efficiency and mindful movement rather than just pushing to depletion. And that inherently decreases the perceived physiological stress. Less internal stress, less chronic cortisol, less signaling to store fat. It's movement that calms the alarm system rather than feeding it.
Let's focus on the apparatus itself. What does the Reformer with its sliding carriage and the Cadillac, which looks like a giant bed frame, offer that a simple floor routine just can't?
The apparatus allows for progressive, three-dimensional work that is often impossible to replicate on a mat. The Reformer is transformative because the springs let you load the body in positions that promote both strengthening and lengthening.
So long, lean muscle.
Long, resilient muscle fiber. The Cadillac adds suspension and traction, allowing for a full range of motion against resistance. Collectively, they build a functional, stable core and dramatically improve your posture.
And why does posture matter for weight loss? That seems like a secondary concern.
It's highly relevant to the long game. The more functional your core and posture are, the more efficient your daily movement becomes. You stand taller, you move better, and your total background energy expenditure, the energy you burn just living your life, increases naturally.
Without even thinking about it.
Exactly. No extra effort or exhaustion needed.
And then there's the stability chair. That looks deceptively difficult.
It is exceptionally powerful, or as the sources put it, formidable, for deep stabilization. The chair demands intense recruitment of the deep stabilizers, the intrinsic muscles of the core, hips, and back. It offers muscular density and neuromuscular coordination.
So it's teaching your brain and body to talk efficiently.
Yes, all without any heavy joint impact. It's the machine that truly structures the body from the inside out.
Before we move on, the source included a really important detail about hormonal shifts that are just part of life, menopause, stress, aging. Sex hormones are crucial here, right?
They are critical. Estrogen generally supports better insulin sensitivity and favors fat distribution in the lower body, while testosterone helps maintain muscle mass. As these balances naturally shift with age, especially for women, the tendency for fat gain increases.
And muscle loss accelerates.
Which slows the basal metabolism.
So what's the Pilates advantage in that situation?
Pilates offers crucial support. It sustains and builds lean muscle mass without the brutality that can further stress an already shifting hormonal environment. It's a gentle, consistent way to defend your basal metabolism against those inevitable shifts.
And the final surprising benefit was about tissue quality collagen and stretch marks.
Yes, this is often ignored and it can lead to a lot of disappointment. Weight loss is fantastic, but skin quality issues like stretch marks can be disheartening.
They're dermal ruptures, right?
Exactly. And while Pilates isn't magic, its controlled movement, the focused respiration, and the constant stimulation of microcirculation all help nourish the fibroblasts, the cells that make your skin matrix and support collagen synthesis.
So it helps remodel from the inside.
It's a progressive remodeling that aids in improving tissue quality alongside the fat loss.
Okay, so we've made the plan. Stabilize hormones, ditch sugar for fats, and move precisely with Pilates. Now for the reality check. When a listener starts this, cutting carbs, adding fats, starting reformer work, they often feel temporarily heavier, bloated, or stuck. That's a huge psychological hurdle.
It is, and it is so vital that you know this phase of internal readjustment is standard. When you transition your metabolism from relying on carbs to becoming proficient at lipid oxidation, the body goes through a deep internal shift.
What's happening inside?
It involves enzymatic adaptation, a decrease in water-binding glycogen reserves, and a temporary water-salt stabilization process.
You're saying the scale might spike because the body is literally cleaning house.
Precisely, and you confuse this temporary phase, this biological recalibration, with actual fat gain. The key takeaway here is to ignore the scale in the first few weeks.
And focus on other markers.
Focus on the qualitative markers. Is your energy more stable? Is your sleep improving? Is your hunger more predictable? Is your posture better? If so, you are moving in a spiral of transformation, not a straight down line.
You've mentioned breathing a few times. Let's make sure we highlight its importance. How does conscious, organized breathing, which is central to Pilates, actively serve the weight loss strategy?
Conscious, organized, lateral thoracic breathing is a direct physiological lever on your entire system. It's a mechanism for controlling the autonomous nervous system.
The stress system.
Remember that internal stress we talked about? Poor, shallow breathing feeds internal stress, which fuels chronic cortisol and that abdominal fat storage. By deliberately practicing controlled respiration, you reduce internal stress, mitigate the cortisol response, and improve circulation.
Which supports recovery.
It supports recovery and makes every movement you do more coherent and less taxing.
This entire philosophy really boils down to that fundamental idea the sources kept returning to. Cooperation, not conflict.
The body is not your enemy. It is designed for survival. If you approach it with conflict, with deprivation, brutal exercise, unstable fuel, it will store, it will defend, and it will rebel.
But if you cooperate,
If you nourish it correctly, hydrate it strategically, and move it intelligently and gently, it cooperates and it releases. Weight loss, in this framework, is simply the consequence of the body regaining its internal coherence and health.
so once coherence is achieved and goals are met, what does the long game look like? How do we maintain this without becoming brittle and rigid?
Sustainability requires what the sources call a flexible structure. You have to keep the core principles fixed: hormonal stability, the anti-sugar focus, proper hydration, but you adjust the modalities based on life.
So if you hit a stressful period at work,
You might adjust your Pilates session to be gentler, more restorative. If you are entering a different life phase, you adjust your nutrition profile. The method has to stay alive. You adapt the strategy because your body is always changing.
so to synthesize this entire strategy, it's like a triangulation.
It is. Think of it this way. Hormones are the internal language of the body, how it communicates status and needs. Nutrition is the raw material that either calms or creates chaos within that language.
And Pilates.
And the exercise, specifically the precision of Pilates, is the message you send to the body that says, I trust you. Use, transform, adapt. When all three pillars are aligned, you maintain coherence.
That brings us to our final thought. The ultimate goal here, according to the sources, is not merely a visual transformation, but what they define as lucidity. Pilates isn't just a discipline of movement, it's a discipline of lucidity.
Yes, because it teaches you to pay attention, to truly feel the nuance of your body. It allows you to detect those minor drifts early, the onset of stress before it becomes overwhelming, the wrong kind of hunger, the beginning of water retention, and make micro-adjustments in real time.
So if you are lucid, you don't wait for a crash or a catastrophe to react. You maintain control through continuous small corrections, making the transformation truly tenable and sustainable over the long term. Thank you for diving deep with us. We hope this helps you change your dialogue with your body from a constant battle into a lifelong conversation.